you just watched. I watched every snap of Steelers at Eagles. I watched every snap down to the last onside kick that took 15 minutes to uncover the pile at Detroit. Bills at Lions, and I ain't lying, the Bills kicked their asses. It was 48-42, but it wasn't that close. The Bills made a statement. Josh Allen made an MVP statement. But my biggest statement of the day is this one. I picked it before the year, and I'm going to say it again. The Philadelphia Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl. They're going to win the NFC because they've got a real shot now at home field advantage, because they have now tied the Lions at 12-2. And I think Philly's going to win out, and we'll see about that other team that everybody had crowned. I know I watched different segments on different shows this morning while I was running on the treadmill getting ready for the out here 10 a.m. kickoff, the ones in the 1 p.m. in the East. And I'm watching an ESPN segment in which they picked the Lions game, Bills at Lions, and I know it started with Rex Ryan. I love Rex. I love Rob Ryan. But Rex just went head over heels for Dan Campbell and the Lions. He had gone to Detroit to interview Dan Campbell, and it was great, but you get caught up in being around the man himself, the man who's changed the culture, the man who goes for it on every fourth down. And by the way, why did the Lions onside kick with 12 minutes left and it blew up in their face as Hollins tipped it up to himself and almost scored with it the way the Cowboys scored at the end of the crazy Washington game at Washington? But the point is, I watched all the experts, all the analysts on ESPN pick the Lions because everybody but me was crowning the Lions. I just don't love their defense, and I realize they don't have Aiden Hutchinson, and they hope to have him back for the end of the year, and Anzalone should be back before then. And yet, you gotta give it up to the Bills, because their defense, I can't even keep up with it. They have just been decimated from the start of the year. And then just when I thought they had Milano back, then he was out in the second half today, and they didn't have Rapp, and they didn't have Hamlin. They didn't have Rasul Butler. I don't know how they keep doing it, but Sean McDermott can really coach. He doesn't have Dan Campbell's personality or mystique or Q rating. He's not big with the Rex Ryans of the world, and nobody seems to want to interview Sean McDermott, but you want to talk about coaching. And again, they went in and made a statement today, and the biggest statement they made was, sorry about this, Rex Ryan, the Lions ain't it. I'm sorry. If I got Josh Allen against Jared Goff, give me Josh Allen every day and every night, and he took the ball and went right down the field. They were running the football. But Josh Allen just all but ran away with MVP. I know we got 3 weeks left, but when you can go into Detroit, albeit against that defense, which is highly rated by Pro Football Focus. I don't get it, but they do. They like the Lions defense at Pro Football Focus statistically, but Josh Allen goes 23 of 34 for 362. He runs it 10 times for 69 yards. He makes 3 plays that are backyard football plays that just took my breath away. And one near the end of the game, he fakes out a free rusher, ducks under him, and throws a basketball 2-hand chest pass to Dalton Kincaid. I wanted him for the Cowboys. You remember when I was campaigning for Dalton Kincaid. And it got called back and nullified by holding. But the point was, Josh Allen just took this game over. The Buffalo Bills just took this game over. And I know that the one great thing about Dan Campbell's team is they will not stop fighting and scratching and clawing, and Jared Goff clawed back. But I ain't lying, man. The Bills are real, and they showed you they're real. I know it's 48-42, but when I'm looking at what Josh Allen and company did to this team, it was devastation. Which brings me back to the team that is going to win the Super Bowl. As I told you from day one, the Eagles are just better than the Steelers. The Eagles dominated the Steelers because the Eagles have the best defense in pro football. I said they would going into the year, and look at them now. And I said that Jalen Hurts would be the MVP, and I'm not right about that at this point. So many people had Saquon as the MVP until today, and Saquon weirdly didn't have much of a game today. He ran 19 times for 65 yards. Not terrible, but not MVP quality. He caught 2 balls for 9 yards. Not the worst, but no more MVP talk. And Kenneth Gainwell had 3 or 4 big plays, 3 for sure, big plays, make you miss plays, spin plays in the open field. Got loose, he carried it 7 times for 20 yards, no big deal, but he caught 3 balls for 40 yards. And during the second quarter, I don't know if Saquon was banged up or not. Sirianni said at halftime he wasn't banged up. They just liked the way Gainwell was playing strategically against the Steelers defense. I don't know, but I immediately tweeted, man, that is not good for Saquon's MVP case. I don't care what you say. If Kenneth Gainwell is replacing you in the second quarter because you like the matchup better, then the head coach is disqualifying Saquon, unless he's banged up, and he well may be. I don't know. Maybe they're just protecting. Maybe they're just hiding. But Kenneth Gainwell made some plays. They're lucky to have Kenneth Gainwell. But listen, I covered him at Smith during those Super Bowl runs, 92, 93, 95. I was there every snap. I don't even remember who the backup back was. I know it was Curvin Richards going into the first Super Bowl run when they wound up out here in Pasadena playing Buffalo. Remember, Jimmy cut Curvin Richards because he fumbled in the fourth quarter of the final regular season game at home. That was at Old Texas Stadium against Mike Ditka's Chicago Bears, when Troy Emmett and Michael were sitting on the bench and had taken their pads off because it was a rout, and Curvin Richards, the backup back, fumbled. And the next day, Jimmy cut him because Jimmy wanted to send a message, I won't stand for that. They went into the playoff run, their first big playoff run, without a backup running back. So Kenneth Gainwell, really? I'm sorry, Saquon's MVP case took a big hit today because Josh Allen was spectacular. And by the way, Jalen Hurts was pretty spectacular himself because they came in with the fewest pass attempts in pro football, the Philadelphia Eagles. And everybody said, well, you can't just run your way to a Super Bowl. And today he said, okay, watch this. And he threw it 32 times. You critics like that? He completed 25 of 32 for 290, almost 300 yards passing. It's a pretty good Pittsburgh defense. At least it was top 5 in stopping the run. Jalen threw 2 touchdown passes without an interception. He did fumble in the first half, which I did not like, and Cooper DeJean did fumble on a punt return. Their rookie out of Iowa, who is just a flat-out freaky stud, but I don't like that. They actually kept Pittsburgh in a game that was still pretty much of a wipeout and would have been a wipeout by halftime if they hadn't fumbled twice. And I know Pittsburgh had a chance late third quarter. There was a toss play to Najee Harris, and he just whiffed. He just was trying to find a hole against that stout Eagles defense. It's not stout, it's ferocious, it's fierce, it's suffocating, it's punishing. And he looks up to try to find a little crack of daylight, and the ball goes right through his hands on the toss play. Philly's ball, that was in the red zone, and that pretty much ended the game. But what I love the most about the Eagles today, and I did a big commentary about this on the Skip Bayless show last week, was Jalen came right out and said, I'm throwing it to A.J. Brown. We are going to show you we are cool. I know for a fact they were not cool last year as the Eagles lost their last 6 games and went from 10-1 to 10-7 and lost at Tampa pathetically in their playoff game. I know they had a huge disagreement over a very personal matter that I don't want to detail because I don't know the exact gory details of it, but it was the kind of thing that between two men can be over and out, can be, I'm not speaking to you ever again. And I was told during the offseason that they did forgive, if not forget, but they worked through it. And then apparently, as Brandon Graham said on a podcast last week, they hadn't worked through it, and it looked bad last week because Jalen had a terrible, what did he throw for 108 yards last week, and he just couldn't get the ball to number 11. And number 11, a diva receiver, did not like it. And I called him out, said the onus is on A.J. Brown. You've got to swallow it. As Michael Irvin, my guy from Dallas, said all the way through, has told me this numerous times, especially last year on FS1, you as a receiver, you just got to eat it, man. You can never go back at the quarterback, A.J. Brown. You got to give it up. You got to check it at the locker room door every game day, and he throws you the sugar. It's up to him to make that choice. It's not up to you. You can run the greatest routes in the history of routes, but you're playing a dependent position, and your team is dependent on you to keep it together and not cause an issue, not go after the quarterback and attack the quarterback and undermine the quarterback and derail psychologically the quarterback. And that's what AJ did last week, and they came within a drop touchdown pass by Leggett from Bryce Young of losing at home to the Carolina Panthers that my Cowboys steamrolled today at Carolina and played their best game of the year. My Dallas Cowboys did, when it didn't matter. Didn't matter. I was torn up about it because I think we could have won our last 7 and been right in the playoff race. But you know what happened on a not blocked but tipped punt last Monday night? On Monday Night Football against the Bengals at Jerry World, it skyrocketed forward. It didn't go backward. And God, I can't even talk about it. That was the end of that deal. That was the end of my season. And of course, we go down and we save Mike McCarthy's job today. Way to go, Dallas Cowboys, by dominating the Carolina Panthers, who were favored for the first time in 2 years. 2 years, 34 games. Over 2 years. They were favored to beat my Dallas Cowboys. It has come to this, but my Cowboys have a chance to play spoiler in 2 weeks at Philadelphia, and now I don't think they will because the Eagles are going to close this thing out. And what I love the most about today is it felt like Jalen and AJ slammed the door shut on whatever problems they're still having that Brandon Graham detailed on the podcast. It felt like right away, Jalen said, I'm going to throw the ball to 11, whether you guys like it or not. And that's what set the tone for the game. And after the touchdown pass that he threw to 11, Jalen and AJ did a little celebration dance together. You got to rehearse those things, right? Don't you have to practice somewhere in front of the mirror in the locker room just to make it go? I couldn't tell what it was. I think it was a kid in play, but I'm not sure. But I didn't care. I was swooning. I was like, that's it. That's what I need to see. Even if they were sort of faking it or playing to the crowd or preaching to their home choir like we're good. Even if they're just putting on a show and they're not really that great, that was a start. Today was a start. And a lot of people I saw were picking the big bad Steelers in their defense, and Mike Tomlin, who has a winning record as an underdog as a head coach, which is just impossibly great. A winning record as an underdog, and yet now Pittsburgh had won, here's a stat for you, Pittsburgh had won 7 straight games as underdogs. That tied the second longest streak since the merger. The NFL AFL merger. So they came in, a lot of people loved them as they're 5.5 point dogs, and they just got their butts kicked. It went up and down the field. The final yards in this game, just to frame it for you, Philly had 401 yards. Russell Wilson and company had 163 yards. You know and I know Pittsburgh's offense is just not that good. Is Russell a little better than that backup Justin Fields, the backup quarterback, who played miserably against the Cowboys when we won on the road? Remember on Sunday Night Football, I still don't know how we stole that game, or we'd really be in trouble. But we stole it because Justin Fields was awful that night. just inaccurate, indecisive, awful. And Russ has been a little better. And Russ made a couple plays today, but he got away with an underthrow on a flea flicker late that put them in position before Najee fumbled. And I'm sure he gives you a little better chance just on veteran poise and experience of winning games like this. But come on, 401 yards to 163 yards. And how about this? Time of possession. Eagles dominated 40 minutes to 20 minutes. Why is that? Because the Eagles have the best defense in pro football. And those two kids, Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, I said it. They got the two best cornerbacks in the draft. They got both of them. They pulled it off. Howie Roseman, Executive of the Year. I said he won free agency. He got Saquon. And then he went out and won the draft. And he got the two best corners, and they're both starting and playing highlight that they look like Pro Bowl caliber players. Not saying Mitchell's going to make the Pro Bowl. I don't know if Cooper's played enough yet. But my God. And those two big stud defensive tackles, this defense is dominating the league. It's why the Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl. I first guessed it. I called it before the season. Everybody laughed. And look at them now. And they're going to catch and pass Detroit. I still say that the NFC Championship game will be in Philadelphia. I'm on the record predicting, before the year I predicted Green Bay at Philadelphia in the NFC Championship game. We'll see if Green Bay wins coming up here in a couple of minutes. At Seattle, it'll be a tough game, but I like the way they have played of late. And by the way, I know somebody's going to be watching this game. My friend Lil Wayne, if you're watching the Heisman last night, he had texted me and said, I'm going to New York to be with Travis Hunter and Dion and Shadeur and Shiloh and family at this Heisman because it's going to be a very special night. And was he ever right? And because of that, I asked him if he would join me on my show tomorrow. It will drop tomorrow. Stay tuned for that. Wayne and I will talk about Travis Hunter, and that night it was a special. I thought it was the greatest Heisman celebration on live national TV that I have ever witnessed, and I've seen every one of them back to God knows how far back I go. This was it, and I think it might have been Wayne's most special moment, and he's been to 100,000 sports events. He goes to everything. He's the greatest sports fan I have ever known. He's also the smartest human, other than me, that I've ever known. He is my brother, and he will join me tomorrow to talk about Travis, the night in New York, the Packers night tonight. That's why I'm rooting like crazy for the Packers, because I want Wayne in a great mood tomorrow. He may still be flying high off just the Heisman Trophy celebration, but we'll also talk about whether the Eagles are going to win it all, whether the Packers are going to play at the Eagles for the NFC Championship, and we're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills and where they rank in the AFC. It's just, their defense is just so battered. So now it's the first team since 1966, the New York Giants. Back in 1966, I was still a kid then. But first team to give up 40-plus points in back-to-back games. And they lost one, obviously, at the Rams, but they gave up, 44 to the Rams, and then they gave up 42 today, and they split the games, and they should have won today by a ton. But look, will Detroit, obviously Detroit has their injuries, but I can't get all worked up. They lost Carlton Davis today, and then that kid Dorsey, that looked like horrible. They had to take him to the hospital over his ankle. I don't know. I couldn't see it. They didn't show it, but the whole team went out. It must have been really gruesome. God bless him in his recovery, but they were down first and second string cornerbacks, and obviously no Aiden Hutchinson and Anzalone. And then they lost McNeil Lade, who's been an anchor for their defensive line. But listen, Buffalo, it's just nobody even talks about how many players they've lost, but they're a wreck. And yet, Ed Oliver, do you remember Ed Oliver? I do, at University of Houston. I loved him. And he went, 9th overall back in 2019. And it was sort of a quiet ninth overall. But he's 6'2", 290, and he was all over Jared Goff today with a little help from Von Miller. I know he's longer in the tooth, a little up there. He's not quite the Denver Von Miller anymore, but he can still create some thunder and a little lightning to go along with Ed Oliver, and all of a sudden they can rush the passer. But, you know, Dan Campbell, now he's fallen into that trap of I'm trying to live up to my billing now. My mystique is I go for anything. I do things nobody's ever thought about doing because I can, and my team believes that we will. Well, I don't know. An onside kick with 12 minutes left? That's just crazy. And it looks bad now because it obviously blew up. I don't know. I'm just not the biggest Lions fan. I ain't lying to you. I'm not. I'm not the biggest Jared Goff fan. I don't love their defense. Their two running backs today, they went nowhere. They had, what, 15 for, I can't read my writing here. Was it, Tyler, was it like 46 yards today? Is that what you had?
Lions.
Yeah, Lions, 15 for 46, I think it was. I mean, they you know, they just didn't do a lot of damage, those two. And I love Jahmyr Gibbs, but they did not get loose against the Buffalo defense. 15 for 48. So they were no factor. Jared Goff had a huge day because they got over 500 yards. And a lot of it was, it's not garbage, but that team just will not quit. They kept fighting, scratching, clawing, and almost got back in the game. Josh Allen, though, was just too good. That's MVP. He made a couple of plays today. The one where he rolled right and then just pulled up and stopped and threw like a 65-yard rocket flat-footed for that huge gain. And then there was a third down later in the game, sort of mid-fourth quarter when it was still a little dicey. Josh Allen threw the sweetest ball to Dalton Kincaid on third down against two defenders, just dropped it right down the chimney to him. And Dalton Kincaid, it's only a couple of years in the league now, and he catches the ball, hops up on the two defenders, and points down to you and you. I got you and I got you. I loved it. Took some balls, took a little brass. But that's what happens when you have Josh Allen throwing you the football, because you think you can beat anybody because you can. You beat Kansas City at home. And you lost a shootout to Matthew Stafford, but a lot of teams are going to lose a shootout to Matthew Stafford because nobody can spin the football any better than Matthew Stafford when he's hot and he's got those two receivers flying. Speaking of Kansas City, they did win today, 21-7 at Cleveland. I called them last week the luckiest team in the history of football because I detailed how they have won 7 games on last possessions, including 6 at what I called now Sparrowhead. This wasn't at Sparrowhead today, this was at Cleveland. They're now a flawed, vulnerable home team. Nobody's afraid of Sparrowhead anymore. And yet, they're now 13-1. How can you get to 13-1 when you have 7 great escapes that involve a lot of wild luck, just wild luck? And Patrick Mahomes is having career low stats across the board and didn't put up big numbers today. And then I wasn't watching it closely because I had the 2 big games on. But then I saw the play. He got pressled, got twisted, turned his ankle. And you say, well, maybe they're out of luck now. Maybe they just ran out of luck. As I said on my podcast, they're going to be spit out of luck pretty soon. I was talking about in the playoffs because you're going to use up your, I don't know if you got 9 lives, but you used up 7 of them. Maybe the genie gave you 7 wishes, but not 10, 11, 12 wishes. Something will bite you in the playoffs. And yet, did it bite Patrick in the ankle today? I think not. It didn't look that bad to me. And Patrick did say after the game he'll have to see how it feels tomorrow because his adrenaline's still pumping. But he did say if it had been a game of different circumstance, of magnitude, he could have finished the game. And I believe him. He is extremely durable. So I'm not going to overreact to that ankle injury. I will bet you, and they're now 13-1. Come on. I think they're going to be okay. And I don't doubt that they'll hold off Buffalo for home field and that Buffalo's going to probably have to go beat them at Kansas City, which Josh Allen is this year highly capable of. He just doesn't turn the ball over anymore. I've raved about him. I was not a Josh Allen fan because he was the all-time turnover machine. He went into this year, in his time in the league, leading the entire NFL in turnovers. I'm talking about interceptions and fumbles lost. Last year was his worst year with 22 total turnovers. He has grown up before your very eyes. And once again today, no turnovers. How do you do that? How do you go into Detroit and you're rambling and you're gambling and you're trying this and you're trying that? He's cleaned up his act right before your very eyes. That's what I love. I love players who go into an offseason and say, you know what, I'm going to fix that, I'm going to fix that, and I'm going to work my way out of that. I'm going to go into the lab and I'm going to figure out how not to do that anymore. And he's not top of the charts in lowest turnovers, but by his standards last year, you can win with this Josh Allen. You can go win at Kansas City with this Josh Allen. Which brings me back to my favorite guy in the league. He did it again today. I have to, before I let you go, laud and applaud Baker Mayfield because he did it again against a really good defense on the road out here at SoFi against the Los Angeles Chargers. Now revitalized, reinvigorated, recultured by Jim Harbaugh. And it was 40-17 Tampa today. Tampa rose up to 8-6. They'd lost 4 straight games, and now here they come. And what have they won 4 straight? They're going to, as I predicted, they're going to win the NFC South. Baker went 22 of 27 for 288 and 4 touchdowns, a couple that were Pro Bowl throws to Mike Evans, the most underrated receiver, maybe in the history of professional football. He is in the history. He's the most underrated. But the beauty of what they're doing with Baker is the Bucs ran for 233 today, 233 yards against that defense. Are you kidding me? When you got Baker flinging like that and you got Bucky Irving going 15 times for 117 yards, you are a threat to anybody in the NFC. They are the dark horse. They're the just off radar team that's going to cause somebody a bunch of postseason misery. I hope it's not the Eagles. I don't think it will. The Eagles lost there last year, and that was the end of them. They do seem to have the Eagles' number. Who knows? Maybe they'll rise up again. Baker can beat anybody at any time. And I'm going to remind you, a lot of people laughed at me for saying Baker should go number 1 overall, and he did to Cleveland, and the circumstances were god-awful. That's a sad sack organization, and he was stuck there, and yet he rose above it as a rookie and had a great year. And then they went and got him Odell, and he and Odell, who were great friends, vacationed together, never clicked. And I kept saying, no, Baker's that good. He's worth the first overall pick. And he struggled at Carolina, and he wound up at Tampa last year, and the rest is history. As I said last week on my podcast, the Falcons could have gone to get him for $30 million, and they gave Kirk Cousins $50 million and 50 more next year, guaranteed $100 million. They could have had Baker, but they don't. Tampa is ecstatic to have Baker, who has changed their culture post-Brady. So way to go, Baker. Way to go, Josh Allen. You have seized control now. You are the pulling away front runner in the MVP race. And way to go, Eagles. You're backing me up. You're going to win the Super Bowl. It's Skip. Over and out. Watch Wayne and I tomorrow on my podcast. We'll see you then.